Hello, everyone, and welcome to Two Goals. I'm Maria Laura,
And I'm Katya.
and we would like to introduce our first meeting with a doctor at the podcast. With both a degree in medicine and in orthopedic surgery and sports medicine, and many years of consulting for these areas, working with, among others, the Philippine Sports Commission, the Philippine Football Federation Medical Committee, and as one of the panel doctors of the Asian Football Confederation, we're happy to introduce you to Janis Ann Espino-de Vera. Janis, welcome to Two Goals.
Hello, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be invited to your podcast.
Thank you very much, Janis, for accepting our invitation. And we tend to normally start this conversation with maybe like a common feature related to sports, but I mean, talking about your childhood and youngsters. But actually, since you are our very first in this area of expertise, we would like to ask you something completely different, which is we have all struggled a bit during this pandemic. I think this is common with, I mean, we can talk about Portugal as well as Colombia, as well as the Philippines. Staying inside is hard. We tend to be social individuals. We like going out. We need to work outside. We need to practice sports. And we would like to ask you from your perspective, how busy have you been during this pandemic? Do you think there might be crucial changes on practicing sports and becoming an athlete after this new normality and historical moment?
All right. I have been more busy this pandemic with administrative work and meetings rather than hospital work, to be honest. Before the pandemic, I would have clinics 2 to maybe 5 hours a day, Monday to Saturday, and maybe surgery for several hours. And one or maybe on rare occasions, 2 meetings a day, maybe twice to 3 times a week. But now I would be having meetings almost every day and sometimes even 3 to 4 meetings a day. When the pandemic started last year and when we were placed on enhanced community quarantine, I chose to close my clinic and do telemedicine consultations only. Now, since my specialty is orthopedics and sports medicine and surgery, compared to internal medicine specialists, pulmonologists, or intensivists, I only get called to go to the hospital for fracture surgeries and some referrals, and once when I was scheduled to be on emergency room COVID duty. However, as I said, I have been busy more with administrative work, which thank God I'm allowed to do from home. I was assigned to be the head of the contact tracing work group of the Philippine Sports Commission, or PSC as we call it. And when we have employees of PSC who are identified to have COVID, we do contact tracing for them and I submit reports on this. We also have been making health and safety protocols and return to work protocols for all the personnel in the Philippine Sports Commission. Since May of 2020, we have been making protocols for return to sports of our national athletes. Now, this is in coordination with the different national sports authorities, the Department of Health, the Philippine Sports Commission, and the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases. Come September or October of last year, I can't really remember exactly when, we have planned for an Olympic training bubble for our national athletes who are Olympic hopefuls. And this entailed a lot of meetings and again, writing protocols and such. Our athletes, coaches, and medical staff and the secretariat entered the Olympic training bubble January 15th this year, and we have been busy taking care of athletes in the bubble, monitoring the bubble, and making sure the integrity of the bubble is maintained so that we won't have any outbreaks inside the bubble. Come September of 2020, the Philippine Football Federation Medical Committee, which, as you said, I am a part of, had to start making health and safety and return to sport protocols for the different clubs and prepare for the Philippine Football League bubble, which happened October to November of last year. Of course, we also had to monitor that bubble and take care of all the bubble occupants again and make sure again that the integrity of the bubble is maintained and again, no outbreaks occurred. Now, that same month, because of the changes we implemented and the requirements for the different football clubs, one being the club has to have a team physician who will also act as a health and safety officer. I was contacted by Maharlika Manila Football Club, which is one of the newest football clubs here in Manila, and they asked me to become their team physician. So I have been taking care of the team since then. I was also given the opportunity to be one of the AFC medical officers in the AFC Champions League East Zone last November. This was actually held in Doha, Qatar, and I was in an AFC bubble from November 15th till the 9th of December. Not to mention, I'm also part of the orthopedic residency training committees of two hospitals here in the country, namely St. Luke's Medical Center and Jose Reyes Memorial Medical Center. And again, because of the COVID situation in the country, the training of the residents have also been greatly affected. So we also have been having a lot of discussions and have been changing the formats and the way we train the residents. To cut the long story short, yes, I've been quite busy mostly with medical, administrative, and COVID stuff, webinars, and meetings. Now, saying all that, I guess it's quite obvious that practicing sports and becoming an athlete is very different now compared to before the pandemic. I remember as I was covering one of the AFC Champions League matches, I was talking to another medical officer and I told her, don't you just miss the excitement of a live football match? You know, the fanfare, the loud cheers of the audience, loud music, drum rolls, media, the kids escorting the athletes out of the dugout, etc., etc. It just feels so different. There have been a lot of changes implemented in the way sports is practiced now. For example, in trainings and venues, there should be different entrances and exits designated because there has to have a one-way flow of walking traffic. Temperature checks have to be done at the entrances. Hand sanitizers are seen everywhere. The number of athletes and support staff in training venues are limited. Athletes come in, train, and leave right after because they're not even allowed to shower in the training venues. Eating is not permitted. Each athlete should have his or her own water bottle. They can't share their personal stuff anymore. Everyone who's not in the playing field has to wear their face masks. A distance of 2 meters has to be practiced every time. No physical contact is allowed. Even the turf, the athletes, they're not allowed to spit anymore. The athletes would used to swallow water and then spit it out. That's not allowed anymore. Celebrating goals are not allowed. There's so much change. Even in the buses, they can't even sit together, they can't even talk to each other. So and even in competitions, competition bubbles are now a thing. RT-PCR swab tests and antigen tests are a staple. I don't know how many cotton swabs came into each nose of all the athletes and the coaches during the AFC bubble last year. And one other sad thing is audiences are limited or sometimes not even allowed. Everything is just so different. I mean, another example is last week I attended an orientation for the Tokyo Paralympics, and this is actually the first time I'm attending an orientation prior to a major sports event. I mean, I have been to two Southeast Asian Paragames and the Asian Paragames, but there never was an orientation before we went to an event. Now there's just so much to be done prior to an event and prior to traveling. Don't get me wrong, I'm just so happy that sports is already starting to make a comeback after the pandemic started. But let me just say that I'm dreaming of the day when everything would go back to how it used to be. But I'm really not so sure. I think it may take a while, or maybe it might not even go back to how it really used to be. And maybe we just need to keep practicing health and safety protocols for life. I mean, I really don't know.
First, thank you for the perfect overview of this last year until today. I mean, it was 1 year, but for us no, but at least for you, I'm pretty sure that it seemed like years, not 1 year, because everything changed then, and the medicine was exactly the central point of everything. And let me say, and I can talk for Maria too, we also we both dream of of this day, that this day comes,
Right?
everything can be the same. But as you said, probably it will not be. Even football as we knew how it was, it is not the same, and it will not be on the pitch also as the. And even what you said about the match days, everything, you talked more on the pitch, but even outside of the pitch, the match day enthusiasm to go to a game, we miss that. And we know that
Exactly.
this is the main problem, that I think it will be different. But that's why this is an industry, right? They have to work around it to put it in a perfect way, to make it in a perfect match day. And please bring back football again, because
I know.
we're missing it. It's really a difficult situation. But let's now go to your educational pathway. You went to the La Salle University to study a degree in medicine. Is it common for a doctor, in your case, a female doctor in the Philippines, to focus on sports medicine? When did you first decide to join this specific discipline?
It's actually not common for a female doctor to become an orthopedic surgeon and to focus in sports medicine here in my country. And I will say probably around the world. We are probably about less than 10% of the orthopedic community and the sports medicine community in the entire world, actually. I was in my fourth year of medical school when I decided to become an orthopedic surgeon. During our clinical rotation in orthopedics, I remember my group mates and I would make bets as to what injuries a patient would have as the patient is walking towards our station. And surprisingly, I would always get it right. I eventually realized I enjoyed applying casts and splints on patients and assisting in orthopedic surgeries. So I told the orthopedic residents, and they actually encouraged me because they said there weren't many female orthopedic surgeons, and according to them, it would be an advantage of sorts to me, but it wasn't that easy. Now, for the sports medicine subspecialty, I believe it is because I was actually active in sports during my younger years. In fact, I did taekwondo in middle school rather, and I was a member of the volleyball varsity team of my high school. I have even dreamt of participating in high level competitions like the SEA Games and the Olympics, but med school happened and my Olympic dream was sidelined. Now, when I was a fourth year high school student, I fractured my pinky finger. And being a 16-year-old brat, I was brought to the hospital. And I remember being so scared because the orthopedic surgeon was a huge old guy. And I really couldn't make myself comfortable with him. And I thought then, wouldn't it be nice if my doctor is actually someone I can really talk to and relate to, especially for something that I would need to see him or her several times for, right? So after I passed my physician licensure exam, I applied as an orthopedic resident and I was accepted in St. Luke's Medical Center. Now, as a first year resident, my first two subspecialty rotations were trauma and sports medicine. When I did my sports medicine rotation, I was exposed to a lot of ACL reconstructions and meniscal surgeries and a lot of professional and non-professional athletes. And my mentor then found out that I used to be an athlete, and he encouraged me to do sports medicine because, according to him, there weren't any female orthopedic sports surgeon in the country back then. This was back in 2003, a long time ago. I was the first formally fellowship trained female orthopedic surgeon, orthopedic sports surgeon in the country. And I did my fellowship training in sports medicine and arthroscopy in the National University Hospital in Singapore. And eventually, I found out that I was also the first female sports fellow that they accepted. So um, I was a bit happy about that. Now, going back to the mentor of mine during my residency training, his name is Dr. Canlas. Him and another colleague who was my chief resident, as I was a first year resident in orthopedics, his name is Dr. Molo. They were both instrumental to me being active in the sports scene here in my country. They were the first ortho sports surgeons in the Philippine Sports Commission, and they actually brought me in the commission. And they also paved the way for me to be one of the panel of AFC medical officers and the part of the FIFA medical network. And thanks to both of them, I may be achieving my dream of participating in the Olympics, or should I say the Paralympics, not as an athlete though, but as a team physician.
Well, Janice, I think I'm also, as Katia mentioned, we were behind the scenes. I'm also not an expert on medicine. I am an economist, but hearing you out, I think there is a sense of magic on the things that you do. And we would like you to, with your own words, to share this. I mean, what is the importance of having this experience? And maybe if you can share with us an anecdote on all these years as a consultant, as an active consultant, and being one of these pioneers in your field.
Okay, so as you said, I'm an orthopedic sports surgeon. I practice in several hospitals. And in Focus Athletics, it's an orthopedic and rehabilitation medical clinic. And the magic behind it is actually, I see a lot of athletes, or I would say I see a lot of patients. I see different patients from different walks of life. I would see a professional athlete, an elite athlete. I would see very active individuals who are not really professional athletes, but they just really love doing sports. I would see weekend warriors. And I would see, the office workers who get injured in a sports event in a once in a blue moon sports interdepartment sports event, and they get injured, and I would see them in the clinic. And on the first time that you would see these patients walking towards your clinic, their faces would be grimacing in pain, or maybe you see them in the emergency room and they would be in so much pain. So you see them, you consult with them. I may or may not do surgery for them. I follow them up doing rehabilitation. And then eventually, when they meet the criteria, I would clear them to go return to their previous injury level, or I would say previous level prior to the injury. And sometimes I would even get them back to competing level, competition level. And, for them, just being able to compete again. Or sometimes, I get a bonus of them winning again the competition. And so that basically makes me feel so happy. I think that's where the magic happens. Here comes a patient, couldn't even walk going towards you. And then after treating them for several weeks or months, you see them jumping up and down and running around already. And they're so happy going back to the pitch or going back to the field or doing their pre injury level of activities. And when they come back to you on their follow up, they would just show so much happiness. They would show so much appreciation. They would give you gifts and tell you how much they love you. They give you hugs. Before the pandemic, they would give you hugs and all. And that will give me so much satisfaction. And it just makes me want to keep doing what I am doing. Orthopedics is very visual. I think one of the reasons why I went into the field is because it's very visual. It's not like internal medicine. When you see a patient, you have no idea what's going on inside the body of the patient. I cannot even imagine the red blood cells going in and out of the veins. But with orthopedics, you have a picture. Your X-ray, your MRI, your CT scan, your patient, the limb, the way your patient's limb is actually looking when you see them, then you already have an idea of what's going on and how to fix it. And once you have fixed it, like when you do your surgery, after your surgery, you see the X-ray, you say, hey, this is a nice fixation, then it just gives you so much happiness. When the patient comes back walking and back to their previous activity level, then that satisfaction just, it's just, it feels like you hit a jackpot or something.
So great to hear this, because this is the behind the scenes, right? It's the magic behind the scenes, and it's fantastic to know, because even when we think about an athlete, it's injured during this time that this athlete is injured, we don't hear about him usually. Nowadays we have a bit of behind the scenes because this marketing and media, everything is connected, but we are expecting when he or she will come back. We don't even have the perception of what is behind, and this magic that you described just says everything. And it's really important also for everybody to know how it is, this process. And talking about the process, we want you to tell us a bit about the behind the scenes of another one. So one of the multiple recognitions within your curricula is taking part of the Orthopedic Consultants Group of the Philippine Sports Commission, dealing with your country's national athletes. So would you please, by taking as an example the Tokyo Olympics or Paralympics, as you said, because we need to have this in consideration, can you please develop the process you follow before a big event?
Okay, so in the Philippine Sports Commission, we have a unit. It's called the Medical and Scientific Athlete Services Unit. This unit consists of several family physicians, several orthopedic surgeons, nurses, sports physical therapists, sports massage therapists. We also have sports nutritionists, sports psychologists. We have our monitoring and performance specialists, of course, the strength and conditioning coaches, and we even have a dentist actually. So before any major sports competition, all these units work hand in hand to prepare the athletes. We make sure their injuries are treated, their nutritional needs are taken care of, they're psychologically prepared. So we do have psychological sessions, sometimes with a team, sometimes solo. And then we make sure that they're at their optimum performance level. We do pre-participation medical assessments for the athletes and make sure everything is in order for the competition. So they would have to have some blood tests, x-rays done prior to the competition, and then we do the physical examination, and then we give them the clearance. Now, months before the event, of course, budget for the medical supplies, the equipment and medicines that may be needed for the event would have to be requested. And once the budget is approved, the assigned team physician who would be accompanying the athletes to the event would be preparing his or her medical team's medical bags. So you literally put everything inside the bag. And before the pandemic, that's where it ends. We prepare for the flight and then we go. Now, since the pandemic, RT-PCR tests are required. And so aside from the pre-participation medical assessments and clearance, a negative RT-PCR certificate for all the delegates now have to be written by the team physician or a licensed doctor. With this, you would need to have to make sure that everyone is scheduled for the RT-PCR swab test, and you have to make sure that there is a certain time frame that the RT-PCR test is valid, because before you ride the plane, they would say 72 hours. So you have to make sure that everyone is scheduled perfectly for the results. And then after that, I would need to follow the results. I will have to compile the results, make the certificate, and make sure that everyone is negative. Now, if someone turns out positive, I would have to do the contact tracing and refer them to the COVID management team. Now, aside from this, for the Tokyo Paralympics, we were told that we would have to keep a daily health monitoring form for the entire delegation. So I would need to record the temperature and take note of any symptoms anyone would have at least 2 weeks before the flight. Now, once we reach the competition venue, like maybe the hotel or say the athletes' village, the medical team will have to set up the team clinic. Usually, we are assigned per country, or assigned one space where you can set up your team clinic, and so the medical team would have to set that up prior to the start of the competitions. Then I would have to. I usually tend to do physical check of the competition venue before the event itself. So I want to see the physical structure of the venue. I want to check the exits, and I want to check the routes that I may need to take going to the hospital, and how long it will take me to reach the hospital, in cases of emergencies. But I'm not sure if that would still be possible now because, again, the pandemic. So I'm not sure how much this will change. And then after that, I would also need to plot the schedule of the different events that our athletes would be competing in, so that I can assign medical personnel to cover the different events and make sure that all the athletes are accompanied by at least one of the medical team. Usually when we go for competitions, there would be, depending on the number of athletes, at least one doctor, and then one or two physical therapists, and maybe one or two massage therapists also, depending on the I would say the number of the delegation. So that's how we usually do it, or that's how we usually prepare for a major sports event.
I will make sure, Janice, after your explanation, to thank our physiotherapists, our medical, our doctors in Colombia, because we have had incredibly busy guests. I think all of our professionals in Tugal's podcast, of course, since they are women, they are aware that they need to do a lot. They need to prepare themselves to accomplish their goals. But hearing you, this sounds exhausting at first, of course, from my point of view, but also very.
It's fun though, when
Yeah.
you're doing something that you love doing. You don't feel exhausted. You feel the enjoyment, and you're just excited when you're in the event. You will feel it after. But it's something that I would say it's fun to do. It's something that we love doing, and I think all the women who are in this field would agree with me that even if we tend to get compared to our counterparts, but I would say that the women in our field tend to be the stronger women. So even if we get compared to these male counterparts, I think we would still emerge, I would say, victorious. I don't think any women would allow, negative marketing or anything negative to put them down. I think we would still, I'm still gonna do what I'm doing because I love what I'm doing.
Well, let's keep asking you about the fun part then. Because you're also a member of the Philippine Football Federation Medical Committee. Could you please tell us a bit about the importance of this specific committee, and if you have dealt with an anecdotal case that you would like to share with audiences?
Okay, I think it was in 2017 when I became part of the Philippine Football Federation Medical Committee. But to be honest, we were only put to serious work, I believe, September of 2020. Prior to September, we were only in charge of doing pre-participation medical assessments and assigned as pitch doctors during matches to make sure that all medical matters of that match is taken care of and that emergency situations will be dealt with properly just in case. But because, again, of our friend, the COVID, we had to start making health and safety and return to sport protocols for the different clubs and prepare for the Philippine Football League bubble, which happened October to November last year. And as I said, we had to monitor that bubble and take care of all the bubble occupants and make sure again that the integrity of that bubble was maintained. And again, no outbreaks occurred during the competition. So I think the importance of the Philippine Football Medical Committee is really to make sure that every medical issue is addressed. I think you know that we don't want any, I would say, unfortunate events happening during a match. And so this is where the PFF Medical Committee steps in. So we make sure that everything is in order during a match and even during their trainings if we can. With regard to an anecdotal case, I can't really remember a specific case that we had to deal with that's very, memorable, I would say. But we did have some, I would say we had some COVID cases prior to the bubble. So obviously, because we found that their RT-PCR swab test turned out positive before entering the bubble. So we didn't allow them to go inside the bubble anymore. So those were maybe just the cases that we had to deal with during the pandemic last year. But I would say that bubble was a successful one because there weren't any cases that occurred or we didn't have an outbreak and we were able to make them go home, everyone COVID free.
Now, let's talk about a mark or a milestone, if we can say. On November the 24th of 2020, history was written by the appointment of the first women medical officers in an Asian Football Confederation men's club competition. You were selected as part of this group and you stated, "This is a chance for women to show that we are capable in the field of football medicine. This paves the way for other women, not just in football medicine, but in other fields as well. The AFC has shown that they recognize and appoint people based on merit." Taking your statement in consideration, how far has Asia improved at its job of generating equal opportunities for female football professionals? Are there any goals settled by the AFC in this regard?
I believe that Asia is already recognizing that females are as capable and competent, I would say, as our male counterparts. The AFC has already been giving opportunities for female football professionals. Female referees and the match commissioners have already been assigned to higher level competitions and men's competitions since 2019. And as you said, recently, even as female medical officers have been appointed in the Men's Champions League. And I believe our appointments showcase the AFC's continued commitment to promote and create equal opportunities for women in the Asian football workforce. When I was there in Doha during the AFC Champions League, not once did I feel that they are looking down on me. I feel that they respected the female medical officers. I believe that they respected all the females in the workforce, regardless of whatever nationality we may have had. Because we had there was one from New Zealand. There were two Iranians and myself. So we that's just in the medical. I would say just the AFC medical officers. Now there are still other females in the football workforce at that time, and I just felt that it wasn't an issue. Gender wasn't an issue. I believe that they're already seeing that whatever men can do, women can do. And as I was saying a while ago, I think the women in the field of football or in the field of, I would say, sports medicine are the stronger women. I couldn't see anyone, very, how do I say this, timid or very soft spoken in the sports community. So I think it's our personalities that they see, and I think they know that we're not to be messed with, or I think they see that, oh, these women know what they're talking about. They know their field. They have their, this is their forte, and so they're giving us this responsibilities because I think they believe that we can handle it, because otherwise why would they even bother, right? So I think this is AFC's way of showing and promoting equal opportunities for the women in the football workforce, and it's, I would say I was very honored. I was very happy. I couldn't even believe it that I was going there in a Champions League, because my previous assignments were usually female matches, under 16, under 19 women's leagues and qualifiers. And so this was actually the first time that I covered a high level men's competition. And it was really something that I was really proud of. And I was so happy. And I wanted to tell all the women that, hey, we can do it, you know?
I think it is crucial that the way they portray it in the, for example, I checked this in the AFC website. It's just that there are so many positions out there that are important, so many roles that are, I mean, I do know the coverage given to athletes and to referees, for example. I think it is also important because in a way they just get the attention, but then when you gather the attention, you need to start also developing other areas for people to try and build other reference for themselves. I think that was amazing from this article that I was reading, the way that you were shown as kind of like superstars in a way, because you are.
Thank you. Yeah, that made us. We were surprised that AFC wrote an article about us, and when they asked us to say something about the assignment, we were like, okay, and we were so excited to see how the article turned out, and I was very happy with the way that AFC wrote that article and just showed the world that Asian women are actually, I would say, competent and capable of doing anything you can imagine, I believe.
Well, and on that note, researching about yourself too, we find out, I mean, and I'm speaking for myself, I don't know about Kathy, but I found out that there was a FIFA medical network. I didn't know this exists. And of course, you're part of it. Can you please tell us a bit about this platform and what do you do there?
Okay, so the panel of FIFA and AFC medical officers are assigned in different AFC and FIFA sanctioned matches as the authority entrusted by the AFC and FIFA to be responsible for all medical matters at the different FIFA and AFC matches. No, so we are there to provide the best possible conditions for the match medically. In FIFA and AFC competitions, we conduct meetings with the LOC medical team, and we do inspection of the different medical facilities. We check, what are the equipment in the facility? Like, does this hospital have an X-ray? Does this have an MRI? Does this have a CT scan? And then we also convene with the team doctors and discuss the importance of completion of the injury analysis forms, the MRI process, and the team's obligations. And we provide orientations and trainings with the local medical organizing staff. We also sometimes hold lectures for the teams on doping control and other relevant medical matters. We basically oversee the daily medical services and ensure that the medical personnel and facilities are in place at least 2 hours before kickoff, and make sure that all medical related issues are addressed. We also collect the injury analysis data and we submit post tournament reports after the matches. On occasions, we may also be assigned as doping control officers during these different matches if there's doping control to be done on the specific match. It is also worth mentioning that the FIFA Medical Network, this actually provides opportunity, I would say, for clinicians around the world to meet and share ideas relating to football medicine. FIFA and AFC would hold regular scientific meetings, trainings, and courses for continuing medical education of all the members of the FIFA Medical Network.
And now, before the next question, I have to make here a bit of context because women's football, in this case women's sports, because you deal with athletes, it's on the rise. Everybody is talking about it. It can be done in a good way or in a bad way. Of course, everybody is saying the good way, but I also share here my experience, or not experience, but my opinion. I shared it here because we all talk about this because it's a trend, but we need to scrutinize what is behind it. If we are not, we are always only saying this for ticking a box, or if we are saying this because we really care. So we know that it's on the rise. More girls and women, they are joining and playing sports as they should do since they were born. But for that, we need investment. We don't need only to talk about it. We need investment, improvement, and this also is part or includes research. A lot of research behind, because it's a different genre than the one we are used to see. That is the males that they are athletes. So we're asking you because you have a huge career. So from all these years of experience with different sports and athletes, how would you describe research on treating and recovering of female athletes? In your perspective, how much improvement and investment in this area do we need?
How much money do you have? Okay, I believe still a lot to learn about the female athlete. We have only seen the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. There's still a lot of room for improvement and investment in this area, in my opinion. In fact, in several of the conventions, courses, and seminars that I have already attended, we have talked about differences between anatomy of the men and women and injuries between men and women, but there's just so much to learn, so much to discover. Medicine, as we all know, is an ever-changing field, and treatment and recovery of athletic injuries, just pure plain athletic injuries, have improved so much over the last 20 years because of science and research. And in my opinion, if we focus on the female athlete, there's just so much we still don't really know. Let's give an example. Our menstrual period and the effects of our hormones is just one. How it affects our performance, and does being in a certain phase of our menstrual cycle really predisposes to more injuries? And is there anything we can do about this? Are there medications we can take to prevent having injuries during a specific phase in our cycle? Can we really treat the female athlete exactly the way we treat the male athlete? Because we're actually doing that now. We don't separate men and women, female, male athletes. We treat them the same way. Our protocols are almost the same. Can we really train the female athlete the same way we train the male athlete? Or would their performance be better if we changed or tweaked a certain thing? I think there's still so much we can research on. And if you have money, maybe we can put it into research for women.
I will join your research, only to write, but I will join.
I can help you and try and find some international aid resources. Maybe we can do that. I mean, if we can dream it, we can do it, right?
I believe so.
But there is also another name that you have in your profile. You are a level 2 PI Parathletics classifier. Could you please tell us what this stands for and what have you learned? We have already mentioned a bit about the parathletics movement, but could you please tell us a bit about this influence in your career?
All right. Okay, I'm pretty sure you guys are aware that there are athletes that we called impaired, quote unquote, or the differently abled. That is actually the politically correct term, and they prefer the term differently abled rather than disabled. We used to call them disabled, but somehow it just doesn't sound right. Somehow it makes them a little bit sensitive to hear it. So they've come up with a term of differently abled. So basically, these are the athletes who have impairments such as limb deficiencies, spinal cord injuries, cerebral palsy, blindness, and even intellectual impairments. Now, can I give a bit of a background on Paralympic movement?
No, yeah, yes, please.
Okay. So, following World War II, traditional methods of rehabilitation could not really meet the medical and psychological needs of a lot of soldiers and civilians who had impairments because of war injuries. And at the request of the British government, one doctor, his name is Dr. Ludwig Gutmann, he founded the National Spinal Injury Center at the Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Great Britain. This was in 1944. He then introduced sport as a form of recreation and as an aid for remedial treatment and rehabilitation. And in 1948, which is the day of the opening of the Olympic Games in London, the Stoke Mandeville Games were founded, and the first competition for athletes with spinal cord injury took place in the hospital grounds. So, almost at the same time of that Olympics. Now, in 1960, the International Stoke Mandeville Games were staged for the first time in the same country and city as the Olympic Games. This was now in Rome. They went down in history as the first Paralympic Games. The first Paralympic Winter Games then took place in Sweden in 1976. Now, with the inclusion of other impairment groups over time, because as I mentioned a while ago, it's really more for the spinal cord injuries, but eventually other athletes with different impairments, they also joined, and because of the close association of the Paralympic movement with the Olympic movement, they now coined the term para, meaning parallel to the Olympics. So that's basically how the term came about. Now, classification, on the other hand, ensures a fair and level playing field for all competitors. If you think about it, classification is not necessarily found only in the Paralympic sports. Some forms of classification are also found in able bodied sports. For example, the different weight classes in boxing and judo. This ensures that the athletes of similar stature are pitched against each other. Also, gender and age are another example of classification. Now, with the differently abled athletes, you need to classify them to ensure that people with the same impairments compete against each other. Again, to ensure a fair and level playing field. I mean, you cannot possibly make a blind football player compete against a football player who has cerebral palsy but has perfect vision. So a classifier physically examines the parathlete and assigns the athlete to a certain classification. This will then be his classification, and he or she will compete with parathletes of the same sport with the same classification. Now, I am a level 2 PI parathletics classifier. PI means physical impairment. So that means I'm trained to classify parathletes with physical impairments competing in the discipline of athletics and track and field. So a level 1 PI parathletics classifier has obtained an online learning certificate. They underwent the online learning program for parathletics classifier. A level 2 PI parathletics classifier is someone who has attended a face-to-face international Paralympic Committee athletics classifier program. So for this, I went to Singapore for the training. And this then appointed me as a national classifier upon completion. This means that I can come back home to the Philippines, classify Filipino parathletes competing in parathletic competitions locally. Now, as I classify more athletes, I gain numbers, and then I complete higher courses, I will eventually be able to become a level 3 or a regional classifier. And with that, I can classify during the SEA Games, the SEA Para Games, or the Asian Para Games. And then eventually, if you gain more numbers and then you go more further training, you can then become a level 4 or an IPC Athletics International Classifier who now classifies parathletes for the Paralympics. Now, your second question is, what have I learned? What have I learned working for the Paralympic movement? I've actually learned so much. I've learned to appreciate all that I have in the moment. I mean, these athletes have taught me to look at life and things in a different way. Like, make the most of what you have and excel in whatever way you can. They laugh at the most trivial things and they enjoy life more than I actually do. They're grateful for whatever small thing you do for them, and they thank you unceasingly. Sometimes I say that I prefer working with parathletes rather than the able-bodied athletes, because sometimes the able-bodied athletes have that air, they have this, oh, I'm a great athlete and whatever. And sometimes it just makes it hard for us to work with them because they demand so much. But the parathletes, they do not demand anything. And you give them a little attention, it means the whole world to them. They have taught me to hold on to hope and have courage and trust that everything will be okay, sometimes even more than okay. They made me realize that my troubles and issues in life are nothing compared to what they actually face on a day-to-day basis. The parathletes also taught me to be mentally tough, to have high levels of motivation, to be able to cope with setbacks and be focused on goals rather than on how hard it is to attain that goal. They've taught me to overcome barriers. Being a team physician of parathletes also have opened my eyes to the physical needs of an impaired individual. I mean, I never thought that the simple elevator button, not all but elevators have the double buttons. And when there's a patient with a wheelchair and they couldn't reach it, I mean, I didn't care about that before. But because I became a team physician of parathletes, now I care about that. I've learned to be more observant. I've learned to become more attentive to the needs of the people around me. And I now tend to look around me and see if the place is accessible to people with impairments. I even check if there are ramps everywhere. I've learned to support them in such a way as not to make them feel like they're handicapped and I pity them, but I let them be independent as much as possible and only assist them if they really cannot do it on their own. This is actually how they prefer it. I I have also learned to treat each athlete or parathlete individually, so to speak. One athlete or one parathlete's need is definitely different from another athlete or parathlete's need. No two individual athletes are exactly alike, even if they have the same impairment. There's still going to be something different. Respect is also another thing I have learned from the Paralympic movement. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like I used to make fun of people with impairments, but let's just say I have developed a higher level of respect for them now that I'm working with the Paralympic movement. Like, I have now put them on a pedestal. Like, they're now my heroes, and I'm not worthy. Something like that.
Wow, Janice. I mean, thank you for making our job simpler, because we're definitely creating a lot of posts on this because we need to reinforce these messages. At the end of the day, it's not treating them differently. I think the most important part is learning from what they have learned themselves. I think that's crucial, because at the end of the day, we tend to overcomplicate things. I think I am free to say this. I think at times we just make a mess of everything. But at the end of the day, I think the Paralympics movement has been always an inspiration that there shouldn't be like this, that we can always overcome. I mean, and we're humans, we are adapting. And this is definitely a period where we learned this. We are adaptable. And if you're not adaptable, I mean, either you struggle a lot or you just don't get that you need to enjoy life right now. I mean, of every little moment that you're living right now. So I think, thank you for sharing this, and we are excited to know more of this. I think we need a guest, Katia. We need a guest from the Paralympic movement.
I can
Definitely.
recommend you. I can recommend you.
Please.
Please do. Thank you very much. Um, I mean, Janice, you have such a vast experience, and there is a catchy part, a side part of your curricula, which is that you are performing as a TV and radio host. And the common feature of these shows, specifically the Good Morning Kuya and Mr. Public Service, I hope I pronounced them well. I think they are incredible because they're not only typical media platforms, but they have this, they deliver free public services for their audiences. So they have this social responsibility side. Could you please tell us a bit about these programs and why did you enroll in communications? I mean, what take you to this part of your life?
Okay, it started as they needed a guest for one segment. We have that segment. It's called Usapang Pangkalusugan. It basically translates to health conversations. It started in 2013. They needed a guest, and the Philippine Orthopedic Association contacted me and asked me if I was free to guest in the show. Now, after that show, they invited me the following day to ask me if I wanted to go on the radio show as another guest. And then after that, the week after, they asked me, would you like to become a regular host? Would you have a day that you prefer to go on TV as one of our doctor hosts, quote unquote? So basically, I go on air in UNTV's, yes, you pronounce it correctly. Good morning, Kuya. I go every Tuesday morning from 6 in the morning till 8:30 in the morning as the as the show's resident orthopedic surgeon. So basically, Good Morning Kuya is a morning talk show, and we start the show by giving the viewers current events and news. And then, as I mentioned a while ago, you have the segment entitled Usapang Pangkalusugan, or Health Conversations, wherein I talk about different health and fitness and medicine and orthopedic concerns. There are also other doctors for the different days in the week, and so they also tend to discuss their subspecialties. There is a urologist, there's a dermatologist, and all the other specialties. So after that segment, I answer either phone-in questions or social media questions, or sometimes patients would call or do Zoom conversations or Zoom calls during the show, and we basically give them consultations. We give them advices. We answer their questions. And the other show, on the other hand, the Mr. Public Service, which is on the radio, I did that maybe for about a year. It's basically the same thing. So I basically answer questions or concerns of the patients. Now, these shows, I would say, are my way of trying to give back to the community. I mean, we know that there are people who cannot afford to go to doctors and hospitals. And in this way, somehow, I believe that I'm able to help some patients, maybe even just by giving them simple medical advice. Of course, the kind of advice I give them still depends on what they're consulting for. And there would still be some instances when I tell them, I need to see you in the clinic, or can you come to the studio next week? I will need to examine you. And or sometimes I tell them, I can refer you to this hospital or to this doctor if you need. And I also do the show because it's something that I enjoy the show. It's fun to do, and the setting is different. I mean, I still get to be a doctor, but not in the confines of a hospital setting. So the show, another thing that's I think I got from the show is it has helped me become more confident speaking publicly. I mean, I've always been talkative, as you guys can see, but I wasn't very comfortable speaking in front of an audience. And I think this show has helped me overcome that.
I think we get you, because the same happened with us in a way. I think when you start something, a platform, or you are part of a platform that is communication way, you develop your communications, whatever it is. Because, for example, you have to be a communicative person because you are a doctor. So you have always someone to treat, someone to communicate. Sometimes good news, sometimes bad news, but you need to understand how to do it. And these platforms help you a lot. So it's funny to know that there are doctors coming into these shows. I mean, I'm from Portugal, and we have some kind of segments on the television also, and probably on the radio. But it is something that I think it's important. You're an orthopedic doctor, so you treat people for their orthopedic issues. But sometimes the issues are not only related to the orthopedic parts, are also on their minds, because this is always connected. And only a simple answer that you can give will relieve some part of this mental part, and of course the other problems stays there, and it will need treatment, but at least you relieve something. And that's why also
That's
yeah. So I'm talking by my own experience.
No, you're totally correct. I mean, sometimes the patients just need the reassurance.
Exactly.
Sometimes you just tell them that you're okay, then they feel okay. You know, I this is funny because sometimes I even have patients who have been having pain for, I would say, several days. And
Mhm.
then on the day that they come to my clinic for an appointment, they cannot figure out where the pain is anymore. So
Yeah.
they just see you, they talk to you for a while, and then you start asking them what happened to you, why are you back in the clinic, what's bothering you, and then they say there's pain. Where is the pain? And it's already gone. So sometimes it's just seeing you, hearing you talk to them, asking them how they are. It already assures them, it already makes them feel better, it already heals them, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why these programs are so important, and glad that you were on that. But Actually, if we can here connect an expression that everybody says, the jack of all trades, master of none, you're the Janis of all trades, the master of all. I think we can say that. So
Thank you for that.
yeah. So Janis, as if everything we have covered in your life is not enough, we are curious about your work as a Bikram yoga instructor. What is Bikram yoga, and from your perspective, how important is it to treat and train your inner self as you tend to do with your exterior?
Okay, Bikram yoga is a system of hot yoga that Bikram Choudhury synthesized from the traditional hatha yoga techniques. Now, hatha is a blanket term for many different styles and schools of yoga. It's often used as a catch-all term for the different styles of yoga for the physical side of yoga. So I'm pretty sure you've heard of Vinyasa or Ashtanga, something like that. Now, Bikram is a different style under the hatha classification also. So Bikram yoga became popular in the early 1970s, and the classes would run for 90 minutes. And it consists of a fixed posture or fixed sequence of 26 postures, which includes 2 breathing exercises. And this is the fun part. It is practiced in a room heated to about 105 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees centigrade. It's not as warm as a sauna, believe me, it's not really with a humidity of 40 degrees. Now, the heat basically helps you with the flexibility. It helps your muscles become a little bit less tense. It helps you become more flexible. And so basically, I got into Bikram yoga because of peer pressure. My best friend, had been practicing yoga for 2 years, and then she invited us as a group, the entire my group of friends, to go on a Friday night. Instead of go out and have fun, we went there and did yoga together. Believe me, I was cursing and screaming in my mind. In my mind, I've already killed the teacher a million times during the entire 90 minutes. But right after the practice, I realized I felt good. It relieved my stress. It relieved my tension. And so I have been practicing it since 2012, and I did teacher training, and I started teaching in 2017. It was actually my teachers who encouraged me to start teaching because they saw that I had a good practice. They said my practice was already strong, and they knew that I was an orthopedic surgeon, and they knew that it was going to help me treat my patients. So they actually encouraged me to do the teacher training. So as an orthopedic surgeon, it was right that I was actually prescribing yoga to my patients with body aches and pains. But when they asked me how it treats them or how it helps cure their diseases or their aches and pains, I really couldn't give them an example or I would say an explanation because I wasn't practicing it before that. So when I started practicing, I was able to already explain to them, and I would even teach them simple postures, and they saw the benefit in it. I was practicing Bikram for three to four times a week until, as I said, I became eventually a teacher. And I noticed that the practice of yoga really made me feel good. It helped me be a little bit more calm. It relaxes me, it eases my tension and relieves the stress. It clears my mind as well. You know what they say, when you run, you release the tension, you clear your mind. But I don't like running, so I've never really done running because I don't know how it will clear your mind when in my mind I would just say, where am I going to finish? Where is the finish line or whatever? So for me, running, I understand the passion, but maybe it's just not for me. But I found that in yoga. I found the clarity of mind with yoga. And so I realized that as a physician, in order for me to be able to treat my patients, I should be healthy myself, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And this goes for all my patients also. So I do tell them that sometimes the sickness that we manifest is actually caused not really by physical affectations and diseases, but by our emotions and the thoughts that we have as well. Sometimes we are sick because our mind is not well, because we have so much stress, because we're emotionally hurt. And sometimes even the best medications and the most perfect surgery doesn't really treat the patient if something else is wrong, if they don't feel good about themselves. Now, this is where treating the patient as a whole comes in. I don't just focus on the area where the symptom is, but I look at the patient as a whole and treat them also psychologically and emotionally, because I believe that the psychological and emotional treatment is as important as the symptomatic and definitive medical or surgical management of a patient. And so, as you said a while ago, how important is it to treat your inner self as your exterior? For me, it should be balanced. It should be both. You cannot treat the exterior if the interior is not well. So it should be management as a whole, an entire patient, not just symptomatic treatment, like not the band-aid cure, you know?
Yeah, it's like identify the disease, prescription, done. No, we need to think more about it. I mean, the doctors, because I'm not a doctor, but at least we have to have this perception. And a lot of people, they don't even recognize that their problem sometimes is more the mental problem than the other one. And that's why the doctors exist, and they need also to figure it out. Every person is different, so it's one of the things. And I love that you said you found your clarity of mind with yoga, and this is a perfect description of that. Whether it be with yoga or running, or yeah, it depends on the person. So
I would have to say, I need to clarify things. You know, sometimes people are scared to do the practice of yoga because of, I don't know I don't know how you look at it, but there would be some people who have a religious connotation with the practice of yoga. Now, don't get me wrong, because I'm not Hindi, I'm not Buddhist, I'm Roman Catholic. So I would hear people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be practicing that because of the religion, and you're worshiping the sun and whatever." But for me, it depends on the individual how you practice it. So your the level of yoga that you practice would depend on you as an individual. So I am not in that spiritual level. I'm more on the physical level, so to speak. And imagine if there's a person who is just on the physical level, but who gets clarity of mind with it, then maybe those who are really practicing the spiritual kind, imagine how calm their minds are, how I would say, how pure their emotions would be.
Yeah.
But I'm not in that level. So I'm just happy that my mind is clear with the yoga. And then I'm just happy to be exercising it, or I would say practicing yoga for exercise.
Exactly. So if anyone can be inspired by that, please start.
I hope so.
I have to try it. I never tried. So I will make sure that I will start.
Thank you. I was just going to say that back in November, when I was doing the AFC Champions League, I had one colleague, one other doctor, who's the Iranian doctor, and she said she's never really tried it. And I said, "Do you want to try it?" So we did one class. She's happy with it, and so I'm gonna say, please try it.
This is the first step for everybody, right? We will not say that we don't like it if we never tried it. So
correct.
Try and to say I like it or not. So this is the rules. Are the rules.
Totally.
So Janis, unfortunately, we reached the end of this episode, and we want to thank you so much for being here with us today, sharing your fantastic story and journey. And we hope many girls, teenagers, or women who aspire to be doctors can see your example and know they can combine two passions in one job: work in football as a doctor. There are few examples like yours, and we need to make it more visible, especially your case, being a doctor and a yoga instructor. This is the perfect situation where we can use the expression the calm before the storm, or after the storm. It depends if you practice yoga before or after football medical affairs. So Janis, it was a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Katya, and thank you so much, Maria. It's actually an honor and a pleasure for me too, and I really hope that I get to inspire even just one person, or maybe three, because I already heard that you guys are inspired. So just another one more would make me really happy. And I wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope you get to spread I would say, the love of football and the women in football and women in sports. And I hope that this platform of yours would inspire more women to be where we are. And I wish you all the best in life.
Thank you, Janis, and we hope so. And to all of you listening this episode, don't forget to listen all our episodes available on the podcast provider platforms and also on YouTube. Follow us on social media, on Twitter and Instagram with the name 2 Goals Podcast. Thank you and take care.